And welcome everybody back to the Fandom Zone. It is the most earth-breaking, ground-shaking, but never media show money-taking. The man, the myth, the legend, the most electrifying YouTuber in YouTube entertainment today, Mr. General Zod. So, what I got for you today? Today is going to be a very special day because today I am doing double review. I never thought I'd actually do one of these. It's been very hard to do a live review. I didn't do episode 8 last week, so I'm kind of catching up. I'm doing 8 and 9. Almost feel like too that you really should talk about 8 and 9 together as one episode as to a lot, and I do mean a lot of shit went down. Um I mean, I gotta say, so I'm gonna be having a review on The Last of Us Part Two. I got done with that travesty of a game, and I can't wait to do a review on that. But um, after having that happen, seeing this show was tremendous. It was great. So I'm going to be doing both of the Penny Dreadful episodes today. So let's start with episode 8. Episode 8 was entitled Hide and Seek. And oh boy, some things went down. And look, not everything happened the way I thought maybe it might. I still have no explanation on Magda or Santa Morta. They're still very ambiguous characters, but I feel like Magda, her incantations or whatever you want to call them, the people she has taken the form of to kind of like weasel her way into certain um positions with certain people. I feel like all of them have very uniquely and vastly almost different personalities. And look, they are doing something that OG Game of Thrones did, and I don't mean new Game of Thrones for all of you who are fans, but I mean old Game of Thrones was never about the magic or the dragons. It was about the people and building the characters, and then eventually they led into that stuff. And I think that Penny Dreadful is taking that same approach. Instead of going barreling into the supernatural like they did in the first season, which was very niche. And don't get me wrong, I love the first season. And if you see me yawning, I apologize. I got my cup of Joe. I've been up since 5 in the morning, so yes, I'm drinking out of Boba Fett's head. But if you watch the original, the OG Penny Dreadful, a lot of it was started out with the world of the supernatural. And it took a different course because it sort of built characters and made monsters feel human. This one feels like a role reversal where it's making human characters feel like monsters. And I know, poetic, but that's just what it seems like to me. So some of the stuff that happens in this episode is just absolutely outstanding. And particularly, I'm going to say episode 9 is the MVP of the season. By far my favorite episode. I thought that like 6 or 5 would be the top tier, but episode 9 for me this season really takes MVP. Like, wow, lots of shit goes down, a lot of symbolism, some good stuff, but I'm going to start with 8 and then kind of lead into 9. So, 8 was that was the most supernatural I've seen in the show. This little boy, Frankie, I've said it before, but this just confirmed what I knew. The kid's weird. The kid is not earthly. And there is some crazy shit that goes down between Maria and this little boy. Uh, and the pennant that he gives to Peter's kid to protect him because he tells Marie in the beginning of the episode how Frankie looked at his hamster, a hamster just died, which, I'm not with the hamster cruelty. Sorry, Frankie, you get a downvote for me for that, you little evil bastard. But no, but the there was a lot of like creepy mystery. And here's the thing that was great about this was it wasn't jump scares. What's up, Perp? Good to see you. Uh, this wasn't just a jump scares. The whole episode kind of built to this idea. And this kid, and really, we don't know what Magda's power is, but we know that the kid was created from like the side of her. I know if you're tuning in and just hearing and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, so Magda, Natalie Dormer's character, she is Magdalene. She creates a child from the side of her like abdomen or some shit. And the child, I assume, has the power she does, but is different than her. It's really weird. And so she goes out with Peter and they go to a Nazi meeting, which is fucking hilarious as hell. Just to set up in the scenery or like all these Nazis talking. But here's the thing that I like about the show. Here's the thing that I loved about this show. That the white Nazi man is actually not as bad as originally thought. So Peter's story comes out, and I knew he did some shady shit in his past. He was comfortable killing to save um the girl that Natalie Dormer is pretending to be. And so he kills this random innocent guy because the guy really had nothing to do with anything. It's just the story. But anyways, and Peter explains his story to her, and he was actually a field medic for the Germans in World War I, and then he saw some atrocious shit, and he left Germany and fled to America. And I like this because the show didn't go any way that I thought the show was going to go. I thought there was going to be some SJW politics. I thought there was going to be man bashing. I thought there was going to be a lot of negative stuff. And actually, it's been very down the middle. Even the characters that are made to be these bad guys aren't actually as bad as they're portrayed. Townsend, he's this, I would say kind of a Trump-esque character, right? He's the head of City Hall. He's very loud and boisterous and quite possibly racist. But then when you find out his backstory, you find out why he is the way he is. And I like Jonathan Logan's writing because he doesn't write to make characters one dimensional. I feel like he's writing to keep us invested in these characters. And not everyone is just this clear cut bad guy in this show. They're not just this evil, malicious person. They all have their own kind of stories that go along to being the way that they are, why they are the way they are. Townsend has a very horrendous father figure who, you know, he's got this name and he's coasted on the name basically, but also build something for himself. And episode 8 was a lot of parallel between Townsend. No, that was not. Never mind. But we'll get to that. I'm kind of blending things together and jumping ahead of myself. But anyways, we find out a lot more about Townsend. Also, there's a great scene. What's up, Jamie Vick? Good to see you. Well, perp. Just talking about Penny Dreadful. I'm doing episode 8 because I missed it, and then I'm gonna go into 9 and what I think. But uh, yeah. So the thing that I liked about these two episodes is for different reasons. Episode 8 I liked because it got back to the supernatural element of the show that I liked. But I'm really getting used to the storytelling that they're telling. And I feel like instead of harping on the supernatural like he did in the first season, he wanted to build the characters first. And I feel a very Game of Thrones vibe in the sense that he's building this world before he adds all the crazy supernatural stuff to it. And I'm really digging it because for me, I'm finding it more enjoyable because none of these characters feel really two-dimensional. And I was worried going into the show and the setting and what they were getting ready to talk about. I thought that this was going to be a one-dimensional show, and maybe I'll like it because of the supernatural stuff. What I never counted on is how great the storytelling actually was going to be, and how he wasn't going to try to demonize one group or another. Everybody, even the assholes in this show, seem to have multiple layers to their character. There's a lot more to them. And it's great because he does something that I wished other writers would do. And it's create this sense that not everybody is a bad guy, but they're just people. And that's what I've wanted to show. And that's when they were going into this kind of political aspect in the show, I was hoping that he would handle it tactfully, and he has. I find the stuff very thrilling with the race tension. The way that he builds it is doesn't make me feel like one side or the other are assholes. Just it is the way that it is. That things happen that set other things into motion, and that no real side is really wrong or right. It's just a matter of perspective. And God bless him for creating a show like this because when you get into this talk, especially in 2020, there's always the fear that people are going to make these kinds of shows one-sided, right? They're going to have a lot of political views in them, but I find myself liking every character in the show and clearly understanding every motivation of these characters. Even the bad guys have dimension. The Molly from the church, her mother. Everybody is not necessarily a bad guy except for Magda. She's pure evil. That bitch is evil. And Frankie, that little demon child, he's evil. He's evil. But the rest of the cast has multiple layers to them. And I think if you're going to approach a show where you're going to talk about cultural and racial differences, how this show has done it for these 9 episodes has been absolutely phenomenal. And I applaud Jonathan Logan's writing style and the way he doesn't try to pick out a bad side. As a viewer, I feel like he's letting us pick who we think is wrong or right. And every time you think you got someone pegged in this show, they have an extra layer. And I really like that. So a lot of stuff happened in episode 8. I kind of got derailed, but a lot of stuff happened. But the main point was this. We finally got a supernatural scene. And Frankie is a creep. This kid is the scariest child actor I've ever seen in my life. This kid, like, oh, like, all right, so let me set the scene for you. It was about closer to the end of the episode, right? And we hadn't seen a lot of supernatural stuff or what Maria does exactly in this world. We know she's a bruja, which means a bruja is Hispanic for witch. I'm Puerto Rican, but every culture has a different version of a bruja. Um, and they're very powerful depending on what culture they come from. They kind of serve a different sort of being, but it all comes down to the same thing. That's a philosophical debate for another day. Anyways, she gives Peter Kraft's kid a talisman, and this talisman is supposed to be protection. And they're doing their thing at night, they're cooking, and little boy Frankie is messing with Maria all night about like different stuff and just being a little jerk, but intentionally being a jerk and getting really maleficent with his actions and the way he's doing things and then really strange. Then he sees the kid's necklace and just freaks out, just does this like kind of yell, and like Maria's freaking out, the kids are freaking out, and then like things go dark, and she sees like a hallucination of her husband, and he's all like, "You can beat this evil or whatnot, but my advice is to run." Blah blah blah, and she's all like, "My husband wouldn't say that, so I know it's you, you evil demon child." I'm paraphrasing, and then great special effects here, and I gotta say, I could tell that they use the budget smart because every effect that they have is pretty decent, and her husband like catches on fire like in the beginning of the show, and she gets terrified. The lights go out, and then little Frankie realizes he can't beat her with magic, so he does tomfoolery, and she's got like a tea thing going, and I guess she was seeing this in her head. Knocks it over, burns his hand, and makes it look like she wasn't paying attention to him or something like that. I think this is a great way to throw in the supernatural stuff for people who have started following, thinking that this is just like a political drama kind of thing. I think it's a good way to ease us into this world. This part reminded me of like what is that movie? James Wan made it, The Conjuring. This is like Conjuring kind of stuff, but not going overboard, but just very conjuring like in the way that this is shot. Because it's not about going for like gore, blood, or guts. It was just a very suspenseful scene. Like those lights go out, and I'm watching it at like, folks, I was watching this shit at midnight. And so I got the lights out and I'm looking, and then like you hear his voice, and he's I was like, I clicked on a light or two, and I'm like, wow, like the sound, the acoustics was nice. This whole part was good. Now you have the subplot going on with Lewis and Tiega. They are following the Nazis, and they're getting closer to different threads, different things. The Nazis try to send a hitman to kill the guy creating a rocket. Then Lewis makes a deal with the guy from the mob. Guys, remember he's the head of the Italian mob. And I have a feeling this is going to come back in season 2. He does him a favor, but he does say, "You will owe me a favor." So I have a feeling that's foreshadowing to a favor to be named later. But with their help, they're battling these Nazis. And there's some great stuff in 9 when I get into that deals with this, but I loved the back and forth between the Jewish ancestry and the Nazis' point of view, because not all the Nazis or the Germans or the German people were necessarily on board with this Third Reich deal. And even the ones who work for Hitler acknowledge some of the talents of the Jewish people. It was really weird how he blended it, and it felt like the conversations were really intense because it's like a chess game and a back and forth. And especially before they get to talking, there's a lot of action in 8. That the Nazis are not happy with these two cops poking into their business, but Tiega and Lewis are hero cops because remember they busted Diego as the killer, so they're riding high, and so the Nazis know they can't touch them. So that brings me to the ending, which I'll get to in just a second. But needless to say, there's a lot of warnings being given, but they don't want to touch them yet because they got a little bit of clout. Of course, one hilarious scene I got to point out. Lewis finally finds out that Tiega is Nelling's sister Mary in the most hilarious of ways, and I love the dynamic between, like, honestly, this show is built very, very much on the relationship between Tiega and Lewis. And when he finds out he's banging Molly, it is one of the funniest scenes I've seen in a very long time. Because he's rushing him out the door. And I remembered this line purposely because I thought it was so clever. But they get out, they go to the car, and he's like, you can't do this. This is wrong. I don't care what's going on. Just don't lie to me about it. And then they get ready to leave, and he goes, "Yeah, Forbidden Lays, they're the best kind." And I was just like laughing because this dude is cool. about just about everything. And like he's had reason not to be, but to be fair, Tiega did save his life in the first episode and shoot his brother. So there's been a war going on inside of him, but it was so funny to see these two and their dynamic and their chemistry on screen. What up, Gary? Good to see you. So I was sitting there watching this, just laughing hysterically because that was great. But probably the highlight is the end of this episode. The I assume it's the Nazis. They still haven't said who did this, but they go out to their car. They're gonna break in, get some more evidence on these guys, and coincidentally, Tommy gun opened fire. Now, I'm gonna say this was a warning because yeah, a Tommy gun is not that accurate, but at the range they were at, even by luck, they should have hit them. They were intentionally not trying to hit them. This clearly looked like a warning. They shot the shit out of their car, and Tiega and Lewis hit the ground. Man, eh, you can't see who it is, probably intentionally, but you can see the distance from the cars and everything else. And they hit deck, they shoot back, and this is one of the most intense scenes in this episode. It is great. I thought for like a brief moment Lewis might have got hit. I was worried. This episode did everything that it was supposed to do. And more importantly, this was the first episode out of like 8 episodes, well, 9 now. This was the first one that legitly ends on a cliffhanger. Like the ending is their car being shot up and them shooting back. And then it kind of goes into the next episode. So, what do I think of episode 8? Episode 8 was everything that I wanted as far as the supernatural stuff goes. I give it high marks because that whole scene at the ending was scary as shit. That kid needs an exorcism. They need to get him the hell out of the house. That, I mean, that scene alone was like the highlight of this episode. And there was a lot of character development. A lot of things happened. Uh, some things were revealed. And there was also a lot of back and forth between the Nazis and the cops, Lewis and Tiega. And it's building this sense of tension that was really, really good. I loved it. I enjoyed it. So overall, what am I going to give this episode? I'm gonna give it about an 8.9. I wouldn't say it was at the 9 or 10 scale for me because there was still a lot. There was a bit of exposition, and the show has been slowly building. It's a very slow build, but I felt like the payoff was right towards the end of the episode. Like that last 9 or 10 minutes was just solid, edge of my seat kind of thing. So I'm definitely going to give it an 8. Great stuff. And this leads me into episode 9. So, holy shit, let's talk about one episode. This was the episode before the season final, which premieres, and oh my god, this ep- this episode, mm, this episode, what can I say? I got done watching this, and I haven't done but the last scene of this episode, holy shit. And what makes the last scene of this episode so disturbing, so impactful, is what happens throughout the course of this episode. I want to highlight this is some of the best writing that I've seen in a long time. Episode 9, for me, I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, I'm giving this episode a 10. And now I'm going to give you my reasons why, for me, this episode was a solid 10. So, this episode has some themes going on if you watch it closely. And the themes of this episode, the one before the season final, is each of the kids are in a different place. Okay. Raul doesn't know where he fits in. Tiega is confused about everything. Uh, you know, the sister has gotten raped and she's embraced the church to try to get over this tragedy, right? And the younger brother murdered someone and is embracing becoming this gang person. Well, he's kind of he's kind of on the fence, but he's getting there, okay? And the way they craft this story is so expertly crafted. I was blown away how the last scenes of this episode mirror a really fucked up part that happens at the end of this episode. And that in how he told this story so far, right? And how he's built it. The ending that we were getting at, right? It felt kind of right. And I was almost messed up. I thought this was the season finale just because of how it was ending. And then the last scene happens. And there's something so powerful about the last scene of this episode in particular because of how he frames the rest of the episode as you go through. Okay. Lewis and Tiega are hunting these Nazi guys down. So, oh my God, there's so much good stuff to highlight. I mean, I thought, honestly, folks, I thought this was the final. It was so good. And the final's got to like step up its game because this episode felt like the final episode. I know there's a lot of room, but so much important shit happened. So let's talk about Lewis and the Nazi dude, okay? They finally meet face to face. They have one of the most intense conversations I've seen two people have. And it's a lot of wordplay back and forth. And the Nazi guy is talking about how the lions and things like that, and that how people are scared in the face of a lion. And, he's laying it on thick. And he's a sense of he doesn't lose his composure. He doesn't get mad. They're just having a very good verbal sparring together. And it appears that he's getting the upper hand in this verbal jabbing that they got going on. And you can see when he starts bringing up Lewis's family, right? His kids, and telling where they are and what they're doing and things like that, and that how he's already lost this, and he'll look back on this conversation and he'll feel guilt and shame for having lost. And Lewis, for a second, looks like he's gonna just shoot him in that restaurant, which I gotta be honest with you, most of the characters, even the assholes in this show, I can sympathize with. Like Townsend, I actually am growing quite fond of him. I think he's in for a bad end, but he's not really that bad of a guy, but I'll get to him. But anyways, but this Nazi guy's got to go. This guy's an asshole. And he is more of a very dislikable character because of how he carries himself. And you can see, I don't know, this man's just pure evil to me. Like, if there is an actual pure evil character besides Magda, it'd be this Nazi dude. Like, he plays like he has all these layers and things, but you can see it. This guy's evil, and he's got to go. And, Lewis is ready to put a bullet in him. You see it, but he plays it cool. And he says, well, we're kind of like the cockroaches, and you know what happened with them. And like, dude, he could have smacked him in that restaurant. Honestly, I'd have smacked the shit out of him in that restaurant. I would have taken that gun. I'd have pistol whipped him. Yo, the cops would have had to come and get me. But he handles that conversation so well and eats such crap from this guy like a pro, and still gets that little dig in. And this Nazi guy, I think, is starting to realize he ain't the one to mess with. He's not going to back down. And I'm going to make some foreshadowing. I'm going to make some predictions, but I have a feeling they're not going to wrap this all up in season one. It ain't going to happen. Like, This feels like it needs a season 2. But I have a feeling these two are going to have to clash. There is going to be some kind of really bloody gunfight battle. I don't know, but the way they set it up in this restaurant with some brilliant piece of writing, brilliant acting. My hat's off to both actors. This was one of my favorite scenes in this episode, and I have a lot of favorite scenes. Let's talk about Peter. Peter, I had mislabeled him. I thought he was just going to have some kind of like foreshadowing that he's this really evil guy, but I was wrong. He is actually the bleeding heart Nazi. This is the best way I could put it. He actually believes in Germany and not so much in the Nazism, but sees it as a way to be progressive, and that's why he joined the party. And this is a great statement to how our politics work today and how groups work today. You get into a group thinking it represents something, and then the more you get in, the more you realize they kind of clash with your ideals. They're not what you thought they were, and you're in so deep at that point that it's just too late. And I think that's what's happened to Peter. Peter was a medic in the war, and he ran and fled, and he wanted to escape that life. And I identified with his character because during World War One, there were a lot of Germans who left because of the horrible things they had to do, and they did want to leave that. And I love the speech he gives about how uh they're creating more hate and divide within the culture, and he cares more about healing and mending the fences because I like the fact he's not completely demonizing everybody in this show. There's like two sides, just like in the war there were two sides. Not everyone felt that the Nazis and what they did was like that didn't speak for all of Germany. It was just that by that time, if you spoke out against Hitler, you just disappeared. So the people who actually weren't down with the Nazis couldn't say anything. And I really loved how that was represented and how Peter's character is this really sad figure. Like, he thinks he's doing the right thing and he's constantly not. And the only thing he's been doing right is keeping Maria there because she's the only one who keeps on talking sense into him, which is why Natalie Dormer or Magda or whatever the hell that personality is trying to distance her from that. And it's really great to see his struggle back and forth. And it kind of reminded me of the original Penny Dreadful, but in a different way. I feel like this is more of a human struggle, whereas Penny Dreadful, if you guys didn't know, he was Frankenstein's monster, and he had a struggle within himself about like humanity and whether or not he was down with humanity and what does it mean, and is he a monster and stuff like that. This show is a man who's done bad things struggling with trying to make them right with this new life that he's built, constantly fearing that someone will find out who he was and that his life will end. He's in a really hard, difficult position. And I feel like the show really captures this for every character. The Mexicans, the police, everybody is not one dimensional. They all have their monsters. And thank you, Elsa. Yes, I am not down with her. I'm glad you remembered that. I've been up since 5 in the morning, so if I don't remember a few names, I do apologize. But I had to talk about this with y'all because there's much more to dive into about this episode that I love. But yes, Elsa. And I love how Elsa is constantly trying to push out Maria because she knows who she is. My only problem with these scenes is Maria has met Magda in the previous episode. Now, I don't know if when Magda goes into these other forms, if she's got some kind of glamour deal going or something like that. But I don't, she's ran into her like 4 different times and she's a Bruja. So I'm not understanding how she's not picking up that this chick is these other people. I guess they might explain it later. I don't know. I'm sorry for that sidetrack. It's just me nitpicking, but I feel like there should be an explanation of why she has not like picked these people out much sooner. But you know, that's just a tiny nitpick. So, anyways, Peter has some great stuff that comes to life here. Has a back and forth with his wife. Um, keep an eye on this because one of two things is going to happen here. Either the wife is going to like expose something, or she's going to be killed in an insane asylum. I don't think it'll be too hard to make it look like she committed suicide. So, and I feel bad for her. Look, I did joke last week. I thought it was hilarious the way Peter delivered the line, getting rid of her, like, you're getting out of my house, and by the way, I'm committing you. I thought that was funny. But this part is really sad because she is in an institution and she is not crazy. And so this is the parts where Peter is messing up, man. He's messing up and he knows it. He knows he's wrong. And now the wife is pissed. Like at this point, if he wants to make amends, she ain't gonna do that. And she says a great line. She says how she is going to spend the entirety of like she's like, you can have the kids, you can have the house, whatever. I'm gonna come after you and I'm gonna destroy every facet of your life. And I was like, that sounds like a really pissed off woman. Like, yo, she did not come across when I first saw her. She did not come across as the person he wanted to cross. Now, they don't get much into her backstory, but it sounds like she has a rich family. And Peter's treading in deadly water. Like, if something doesn't happen to her, that's there. She's either gonna come back next season and try to ruin this man's life, or Magda's gonna kill her. I haven't fallen on which side of the fence, but that's a thing. And now let me get to the meat and potatoes of this, okay? The ending of this has to be talked about thoroughly because this is some of the most clever ending. And here's the great part about this show. There doesn't have to be a big action scene for this show to make a very poignant statement and message and do it in a way that's conducive to the story and shocking. Like, this is shocking, folks. Make no mistake about it. This is shocking, but not in the way you would think. It's not a big gore thing. It's not someone's throat being ripped out, but it's still visceral. And I'll explain. So the themes of this episode are the family is scattered in different places. The mom, Maria, feels like she's losing her kids. And one could debate that she's losing them or they're finding their place. And I'll get to that when we get to this scene that connects all of this together. But she's had a rough time, man. She dealt with Devil Child, made it back, got a raise because Peter was like, you know what, Elsa, I'm getting tired of his shit. You know what? This is me. You don't like me. There's the door. And she's like, I gotta switch tactics. All right, so finally Maria has gone home and she is just beaten down and tired and weathered. She's dealt with all of this stuff, right? She's dealt with so much stuff, so many emotional things. And so they decide, her and Raul, they start talking. Raul's like, you know what? I've been off my game. I gotta get as the man, I gotta get back and stuff like that. And so finally, Maria's had enough. She says, you know what? We need to go out. We need to go out. I need to get drunk. And first off, I thought this was very interesting because the mother is always the one who's not really drinking, doesn't really do much. So I thought this scene works on multiple levels because she's like, I just want to go out and forget my problems. I don't want to be thinking about what my kids are doing. Honestly, she just wants to get drunk. Well, whether it's fate, whether it's the powers that be, some other mystical guiding force, all of them wind up meeting in the bar that was busted up at the very first or the very second episode, I believe. They all meet up coincidentally together at this bar. And this is the closest to Hispanic families you could ever get when it comes to fights. Because everything is solved like I remember it with my family, and if y'all are Puerto Ricans, whatever, or come from a Hispanic background, it's probably how you remember your family fights going. They all meet up at this bar. And so Tiega brings Molly to this bar because she wants to go out. And he goes, I know a place where people won't recognize us because they don't go in the Chicano areas. White people don't go there. She's like, cool. Then Raul and Maria were like, you know what? You got to get out. We got to drink. Let's go to this bar. Then the younger brother is like, you know what? I'm embraced becoming this gang member. Natalie Dormer's character was like, oh, cool beans, good. Let's go to this bar. They all wind up going there, and they all react to seeing each other in a different manner. Diego sees his mom and Raul first, and he's like one of the first people to get there. So he goes over and he introduces Molly, and then the sister comes and she sits down. Then the other brother comes, and then there's a World War III fight. And if you guys don't know Spanish culture, this is actually true blue fighting. I was laughing watching this scene because this shit does really happen. So they get into a huge fight, and you hear everything that's been in this show. Finally, all of these characters are in one room together, and they're yelling back and forth. And the younger brother's like, I killed him because of you, and blah, blah, blah. And the older brother's like, what are you doing? You're embracing this, and, you're not these gangsters, blah, blah, blah. And the sister's like yelling at Molly, going, how could you lie to me? You're dating my brother. Was it all a scam? Blah, blah, blah. Finally, Tiega says, everybody shut up. And I was laughing. And he says some of the greatest line delivery I've ever heard, where he says everything this show is about. And I think it's brilliant writing. He talks about how he's not a very good cop. He's not a good Mexican. He's not a good whatever. He's not a good this. He's not a good that. But he is Tiega. This is me. If you don't like me, get to fucking stepping. And I'm paraphrasing. But that's basically what he says. And it's in this moment that is so beautiful and absolutely tricks you. Damn you, Jonathan Logan. Damn you. This moment tricks the shit out of you, okay? Because this is the moment where you're questioning if this is the season final, because all members of the family get together. They finally have it out. Like, they need this argument. They're all yelling at each other, and then finally one reasonable voice speaks up and says, you know what? Cut the shit. For one night, let's just be a family for one night. I'll worry about arresting you. I'll worry about you. You can worry about being mad at Sister Molly. Let's just enjoy tonight as a family. And it's done. And they're having a great time. And you're lulled in, you're like, oh shit, like, okay, well, this is a good way to end the show, right? You're in your little security blanket thinking this is the end and nothing can happen. Well, while Tiega's out dancing with Molly, our good old buddy Lewis is doing a prison transfer for Diego, and they're gonna transfer him or whatever else. Brett Spiner's character, the head of the cops, he's like, yo, I don't want this to go down without a hitch. I don't want no issues, no paperwork, no nothing. Just drop him off, and that's it. And from the outset, things seem like a decent transport. Everything's going to go well. You got this happy scene, so it doesn't appear that things are going to go well. Man, like when I seen this, it wasn't what happened that necessarily bugged me or disturbed me. It was the dynamic that Jonathan Logan shows, because this is at a point where the family has made peace and things with this rioting has calmed down. Everything's even killed. The night is perfect. And then this happens. So the cops are supposed to transport this kid to federal holding to be another district's problem. Bam, they're gonna try him. He's gonna go away. San Quentin, he's gone. They take a detour. And they go into the the Spanish section where they all live, where you seen in the beginning of the show, where the railway was supposed to be built, all that. They go into that part and they hang old boy from a light post. Now, there's a couple of powerful things from this imagery that you could gather. And a reason why I was thoroughly confused when it said this show depicts some very heavy imagery, because no show has ever said that, but I understand it. Whenever you introduce hanging someone, yeah, that goes into kind of a murky area. This last scene works in a lot of different ways. One, it's the dynamic between how things used to be and how they could be, and the reality of their situation now. Two, it shows that the cops and the Mexicans are both wrong. They have both retaliated against each other, right? Now, why did they hang this kid? Let's backtrack. Because they gutted a cop. Why did they gut the cop? Because they broke up the bar. Why did they break up the bar? Because they wouldn't move during this protest and cops were injured. It's all, no one side is really wrong or right in this show. Everything has happened from one action has led to another action that's led to another action. And this, folks, right here is why I can't wait to see episode 10, because in episode 10, I seen the 40-second preview. Shit is burning. I knew that was going to happen. And I'm very curious as to what the next step in Magda's plan is, because clearly a race war is part of it on both fronts, Germany and America. I'm very intrigued to see how this all is going to play out. I most certainly think there is going to be a season 2, because there's too much that's left hanging open that can all be answered in 45 minutes. I just don't see it happening, or 50 minutes, or even an hour. So I think that this was a very good setup. But also, too, there's been a running theme in this show. Since the very first episode, there's been a theme about how each person, each race, each culture, doesn't matter who you are, everybody has intolerance, and how each little act has led to a bigger act or a bigger retaliation, and how when one person retaliates, another one retaliates, and it's far worse than the other one, and it keeps on snowballing. This could have been done. They could have had a nice time. Family would have got back together. Things would have been good. The cops fucked it up and hung this kid. And you know what? If they wanted to do vigilante justice. That's cool. But they hung the kid in the village he came from as a statement. That that right there is the final straw. And Lewis tried. You could see him like screaming, like they handcuffed him because they knew he wasn't going to be down with it. He was very vocal about not being willing to kill this kid. And there's a moment that makes me feel really bad for this kid because he's a patsy for starters. So basically, him not doing it, that dies with him. But also, he is killed for something he didn't do. It's a lie that Mateo told. That's his. He died for his lie, and essentially a huge ass race war is getting ready to start for a lie that he told. So not one side or the other is not right. They both have lied and done some shady stuff that's led us to this point that we're at now. And I think that's why the ending of this episode hit me so hard. I honestly, truly did not see it coming. I thought maybe they beat the shit out of him. Maybe they hang him, but like out in the field or something like that. They hung old homeboy like on a lamppost, all to see. And this could have been a tasteless scene, but the fact that he blends it with a happy scene, with a scene of the family getting back together, everyone mending fences, the mother accepting Tiago for who he is, and talking with Sister Molly, like all these good things are happening, and they don't even really change the music or anything. It blends into the scene of these cops killing Diego and hanging him. And man, stuff's gonna pop off. It's gonna go down. But I give this episode a perfect 10. This episode is phenomenal writing, great pacing, and the ending in particular makes this episode a 10 because the ending is so seamlessly transitioned from a happy moment to a holy shit moment, unlike I've ever seen. And it really leaves you thinking at the end of this episode. I was thinking about like everything because it's one of those moments where you've seen the scene and you go, like, wow, like they they really just did that. Like, I mean, and it's slow motion with the car driving off, and it's one of these moments in writing that I see where I'm like, this is really pitch perfect setup, delivery. I loved it all. I think that they've set themselves up for a good season final. So I have not been optimistic for a season finale in quite some time. And honestly, I think I'm going to do a non-spoiler review on Sunday morning because I have on demand, so I get Penny Dreadful early. I just don't want to spoil it. I'm gonna try to do the best non-spoiler possible, and then I'm going to do a spoiler filled review at night. But anyways, yeah, these two episodes were great. If you haven't checked it out, go check out Showtime's Penny Dreadful City of Angels. This is some of the greatest writing I've seen in the show, like Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, like that kind of great writing in it. Like Billions, Showtime really stepped up its game with the show. I'm happy they brought it back. It wasn't exactly quite the form that I wanted, but it's the same creator and his signature and his writing style is in this. And honestly, this might be more technically better than the first one. And what I mean by technically is, I mean as far as tight storytelling, tight dialogue, this could be some of the best stuff that we've gotten. And this show could be on for a couple of years. So, anyways, thank you everybody who's still watching. I really appreciate you, Sage, Jamie, Vic, Gary North, Perp. I saw you lurking in there. I really appreciate all of you listening to me ramble about 2 episodes for an hour. It was really fun. I'm really excited. Hopefully, we get some we get some really big, impactful stuff on the last episode. I predict at least one major death. I think that it's going to get crazy. Shit's gonna burn, and boy, I can't wait. Anyways, let me know what you think of this episode. Leave a comment or let me know how you felt about this. Um, and definitely tune in next week. And if you guys are interested, or if anyone watches this who is new, or anyone who enjoys my long ass critiques, don't miss me and Stevie J. We have a movie talks on Sunday where we just, like I'm doing right now, we just deep dive into a movie. We've done two already. You can see one on my channel is for Bombshell. He has one on his channel for The Last Samurai. And this week will be a surprise because we threw up a poll for you guys to vote in so that you can pick what we review. So, Stevie J is my Australian buddy. And also, sometime this week, I will be doing a Last of Us 2 review. I've played the game. Too much time of my life wasted. But I'm gonna give you my thoughts. And look, I know you're hearing a lot of YouTubers coming out, they're blasting it one way or the other. Look, I'm going to give you a fair and objective opinion. Most of them are right, but I'm gonna tell you my perspective as someone who actually played the game and tell you some more technical stuff. Like, technically, this game has issues taking the story out of it. And we'll also talk about the media too, because it's the media. Anyways, thank you, everybody. You've been here in the fandom zone. If you don't know, go check out the Prophets of Geek Culture. That's our other channel that we have. And as always, remember the only rule here in the fandom car: kneel before General Zod.